Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We have, we have been dealing with this issue in the past few weeks about evil in the world. And how does God view this evil? How are we to deal with this evil? Is it possible to coexist with evil? Is it possible that God could use this evil to bring about better in us? We talked about how if God is love, if we believe the premise that God is truly love, then everything that radiates from him, that he allows, that he thinks about, talks about, believes in, has to be out of love. Meaning, even the existence of love, existence of evil, is better for us that it's here than if it wasn't here. And it's very, very difficult for many people to wrap their mind around that. So we're going to explore that a little further today. So first, I'd like to begin with a question that I've asked, that you've asked, I think everyone has asked. Why would a good God allow bad things to happen to good people? Why would a good God allow bad things to happen? And we have all asked these questions. And for many of us, this has marked the beginning and for some the end of their faith journey. That you know people that they cannot reconcile this fact. And when something tragic happened, when something happened in the world or happened to someone they love, they couldn't reconcile it. And so they decided, I'm done. I'm out. I cannot deal with this. It's impossible. And so obviously God cannot exist, or if he does, I don't want anything to do with him. You cannot reconcile good God, bad things. Now, the interesting thing about this question is that when we think about these big bad things out in the world, we focus on the things out there. And it's never the things in here. You see? It's never what's going on in here. It's always out there. So here's kind of a follow-up question. And you don't have to raise your hand, but have you ever done anything bad? Right? And here's another question. You don't have to raise your hand. But if there was something that you really wanted bad, that it was really, really bad, and you would do it. The only reason you didn't do it is because you know you would get caught and you would go to prison. But if you could do it, you just might do it. Would you be one of those people and say, yeah, I have to confess, I would do that bad thing if I could get away with it, right? So whenever we wrestle with this question, good God, bad things, it's always the evil out there and never the evil in here. See, the question we should ask is, how could a good God allow me to happen, right? How does he put up with me? If God was good, why hasn't he done something about me by now, right? Why hasn't he taken me out? You see, it's always the evil out there. And so you say, no, I'm not talking about the big bad evil the little evil in me. I'm talking about the big bad evil out there. But if you start asking, well, what's big and what's little and what's evil and what's okay and what's, now you're into the question, now you're changing the question and you're changing the whole subject. Now when you're in the world of how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? You see, you totally changed the subject and it becomes completely irrelevant. It means nothing because you've watered it down, you've changed it. Now it's just, well, now I'm changing the premise, and so it doesn't apply to me. And well, now you start eliminating some very important factors in the story. It's either it's evil, is evil, is evil. And so the fact that it exists in here, I have to reconcile with that as much as I have to reconcile as what's going on out in the world. So if John was here, John, the gospel writer, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, if John was here and he heard you ask the question, how do you reconcile a good and evil in the world? I think he might say, I saw something that might help you deal with this question. I saw God coexist with evil. And the God that I saw in a body did not prove that he was God by eliminating the evil in me. He didn't eliminate evil, and he didn't even eliminate the evil in me. He did something else. He loved me. And then he went about eliminating the evil in me. It's a completely different way to look at it. John said, I saw good and evil coexist. It does exist. It has always existed, and we can reconcile it. I saw God, and I saw evil, and then I saw them coexist. And it's nothing like you could ever imagine. John is a gospel writer that records 7 of Jesus' miracles. Now, for John, he is writing many years later, and he sees miracles from a different perspective. For him, they are signs. He speaks to them about signs. So John came to understand that we spent 3 years with Jesus. And during those years, we watched him. We saw him. We saw his miraculous works. We saw his miraculous miracles. And as we saw, we grew in what? Our faith, our belief began to grow. See, he's saying that we believed because we saw. And so those of us who say, you just have to believe, brother. You just have to believe, sister. You know, that's the way if you're going to evangelize, saying, I believe, if you just would believe, you would have a whole different life. You could be healed right now. Your family could be healed. Your life could be so different. You just have to believe. And that person's response should be, really? Really? Is that the way you came to Christ? Is that the way you came to believe? Better yet, is that the way the apostles and disciples and those early Jews came to understand Jesus? It's because they went around preaching, you just have to believe. That didn't work. That didn't do anything. You see, he understood that it is by seeing is believing, and believing turns into trusting. This is the way it works. And then you may say, well, that didn't happen to me. See, I grew up in church, and I just always believed. I just always believed. And you know what? That's wonderful. For men, if that's your story, that's wonderful. But you know what? Even if that was your story, there was a point in your life where you had to decide. You had to decide for yourself, and I hope you did, why do I believe? Why do I believe what I do? What has talked me into believing? For many people, I've mentioned they're out there walking around and they've never been talked into their faith, into their belief. Means they weren't taught it, they didn't explore it, they didn't experience it, they didn't really put pieces together, And so they just accepted it. And when the first crisis comes along, they're easily what? Talked out of it because it wasn't solid to begin with. John is saying, let's build a strong foundation. It is completely acceptable for you to come to faith, to come to belief. It is completely not only necessary, it is completely doable. You see, so he would not be one in favor of saying, you just got to believe, brother. You just got to believe, sister. And that's all there is to it. He'd say that is so far from reality, and it will never give you the foundation that you need. And so I speak this because when you're praying with someone, when you're trying to heal someone, you want to find out where is their level of belief? Where are they at? And don't tell them as they're, let's say, well, they say, my belief is weak. I feel maybe I wasn't healed because I just don't have enough faith. I don't have enough belief. You don't say, well, just believe more, right? You've told them nothing. You've told them nothing. But how could you help to increase their belief? What do I do with you week after week to help increase your belief? Tell stories. I tell you real stories that take place, that help a person believe. You tell them, here's another reason why you might believe. Let me tell you a story. Let me tell you something that would speak into that would help you believe. This morning, right before I came, I've been praying. I began praying with this fellow, alcoholic, all kinds of issues of anger. Praying with him, we started in 2016. And he thought, this inner healing is crazy, but I'll do it. I'll do it anyway. We did it for a number of sessions, and then years went by, and he's back again. Well, we've been consistently over the past months with him and his wife and his children. His persistence paid off. We uncovered, but he didn't, the point is he didn't believe. In fact, he told me it was, this stuff is just a pile of blank. And he said, I just got to be honest with you. Right? And I said, that's fine. I'd rather know what you really believe. He said, but you know what? I really struggle with this. Where you're finding up this stuff, back in my early childhood, actually, the first thing that came up was a trauma that happened in the womb that he thought was so ridiculous. That's absurd, right? That his twin could die and that it could affect his life. Well, fascinating. Today, how many years later, we're circling around, and he believed this much, and he just hung on. And so if we can get our people to say, just stick with me, just hang in there. You don't have to believe everything to understand this much. You don't have to understand everything to believe this much. You see, just whatever you understand, go with it. And if you can just stick with it, things may change and your belief may grow. And this fellow said, you know what? You really confound me. The things you say are just so, they resonate as truth, but I can't figure them out. I said, you're not supposed to figure them out. But we found out he has got this irresistible problem that I have to figure things out. And so in the womb, this was all revealed through the Holy Spirit, and he totally understands where his life went. In the womb, he could not reconcile bad thing happening to good twin. He could not reconcile it. This exactly, just coincidence, exactly the day I'd like to share this. This happens an hour ago, right? The amazing exact story. He cannot reconcile, and it tormented him. And it began a series of this commotion. I have to figure this out. Why did my twin die? Better yet, his real question was, why did my twin get to go right to heaven and enjoy a peaceful life with Jesus, and I have to go through this mud hole and suffer and suffer and suffer? It's not fair, right? So he tries to reconcile it, and his brain goes into this massive torment. And I find out only a few days ago, he hasn't slept as long as he can remember. He does not sleep at night. He is restless. I said, what's going on? I said, I never knew this. Well, it was just uncovered. He went through a long fast, and it was revealed. God said, this is the issue. You deal with your sleep issue, with your restlessness, your drinking will stop. Your whole anger issues will stop. And it was a 90-day program of discipline, of fasting, of exercise, of reading the word, of prayer and prayer. And he did it. He did it. He said, I only got a C- in my mind. I said, it doesn't matter. You did it, and you're disciplined. God honored your discipline. You think God's up there giving grades? Well, many people do, but he's just got full-time scorekeepers up there. He doesn't. He doesn't, right? We uncover that this process of I have got to understand everything before I believe tormented him his whole life. So every night he is tortured with restless thoughts, trying to solve something in his life that is unsolvable. It is unreconcilable, you see? And so we would do things with prayer, and God would show that he was going to provide. He wanted the proof. He wanted the evidence. It's like, show me the money, and then I'll take the kids on vacation. God said, sign up for vacation, I'll give you the money. You know, agree that you believe, and I'll give you the job. He said, give me the job, then I'll believe. And so for a long period, he said, I had enough of this, right? So for 6 months, I only prayed with the wife and the children. He decides through this process, God says, get back on the job. He comes, he says, I want to get back to the prayer sessions. He's coming back in. And this is what was uncovered. He would lie awake, restless, tormented all night long with these crazy thoughts, swimming and swimming, voices here. I mean, it was really like almost three-dimensional. It was like what was going on in his brain was so alive and so out of this world. It would keep him restless, tormenting him all night. Maybe by 5 o'clock in the morning, he would collapse in exhaustion and wake up just as tired a few hours later. He said, this is why I began to drink when I was 18, trying to put myself to sleep. And of course, it doesn't work because you wake up miserable after you drink, because I always would drink too much or whatever. And so it was not a good solution. So today we uncover that he had been attacked in the womb with 5 spirits that had been with him his whole life. And the last spirit was sleeplessness and restlessness. And it's so fascinating to see the list of how it went down. But he was determined to reconcile something that was irreconcilable. So fascinating. So God uses this program to lead him to a place of victory. If we can stick with our people long enough, the answers are always there. Are you willing to really stick through? because I started in 2016, and I said, I am not giving up on you. This was my son's classmate, good friend. I said, I will do this for your family. And I just would not quit. And they said, you are just a nutcase. You will not quit. And I said, I will always be here. Right? And so fascinating story. So John, back to John, he has recorded 7 miracles, and he calls them signs. And he says, if you were there with me, you would come to the same conclusion I did, that what Jesus said about himself is true, and he is who he says he is. So his hope when he writes his gospel is that if you follow through as I did, he said, I was just a bystander. I watched through as Jesus performed these signs. I just watched. And I watched, and my belief began to grow until finally, when the 7th greatest sign was the resurrection, is when he fully comes to believe. And so look what he had to go through. He said, so I'm going to take you through the path that I was on. And my hope is that when we are finished, then you will come to the same understanding that Jesus is who he says he is. That Jesus' message was one of hope. That if you believe in him, you will have hope. Your whole life will be different. Your world can be completely different. And it's not because you just say you believe, but you know it. I know that what he says is true, which gives me hope. I have hope that my life can be completely whole, and I will be with God forever. This is a powerful, powerful message. So there's a point in Jesus' ministry where they're just not getting it. Now we're in the Gospel of John, and he's already performed 5 of these amazing signs. And people are still not getting it. They are not coming along where he hoped they would be. They still don't understand who he is, and that what he says about himself is true and can be trusted. They're not getting it. They ask questions like, when are you going to show us a sign? It's like, I'm not believing this. When are you going to reveal yourself? When are you going to show us the Father? And he says, I've done all of this, but still you don't believe me. He said, I told you all about the Father. I told you who I am. I told you what you can expect, but you don't believe me. I see at this point in Jesus' ministry, he does something radical. Jesus manufactures a sign so that it would be absolute proof that Jesus is who he says he is. They couldn't. There was undeniable evidence that Jesus was who he is. So he manufactures a sign. And your thought will be, but what is he doing? He is existing with evil. He is using something that seems to be evil, and he's bringing out something so powerful, this powerful, powerful sign. Story of Lazarus, John 11. If you have your Bibles, you can open to this. Now, a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. All he said was, the one you love. There's no name. Imagine being so close to someone. This is important. He is so close, they don't even have to give his name. They just say, messages come say, the one you love. What is he setting you up with understanding? Jesus really, really loved this man. And he's sick. So he said, I have to respond immediately, right? Jesus would think, he is my best friend. I need to respond immediately. When Jesus heard this, he said, this sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. What? What? Did you hear that? This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory. Wait a minute. Sickness for God's glory. So, wait a minute. So Jesus believed that bad things could happen to good people. And not only does it not disprove God, but somehow it underscores the existence of God. Is this possible? Saying that Jesus believed, this statement when he said, this sickness is for God's glory, means Jesus believed that bad things could happen to good people. And not only does it not disprove God, that this evil or this sickness doesn't disprove God, as so many think, it actually underscores the existence of God. How? Well, I've been showing you over the past few weeks that this question of evil, is it really, now, yes, we say it's horrible, it's horrific, and we cannot believe the things that are happening in this world, happening to our loved ones, and yet it still exists. And yet, good seems to come out of it. When? For everyone? No. It's how we respond. I teach all the time, when there is a trauma in your life, you can respond in a positive way, in a negative way. There's always that choice. So God is hoping that you will take any evil that you see in your world, in your life, and you will go deeper, and you will explore what is a way that God could use this evil to deepen your relationship with Him, to bring about a deeper healing. And you know that I have story after story of people that if they came in and they have a sickness, they have a pain, and if they were just healed, what would happen? They would go away. And the real healing would never take place. I have families being healed right now. This man's marriage is being healed. His children are being healed. But we have to go through this journey of inner healing to explore what does God really want to uncover. You see, He doesn't create the evil. And this is where people, if they would only get their mind switched, they say, oh, evil exists. I can't reconcile that. God cannot exist because they're this deep. They're so shallow. They're just blaming the evil and saying that maybe that even God caused the evil. Some say God caused it. Some say God allowed it. Either way, I don't like this God because I don't like evil. You see? But what if evil can deepen your relationship with God? And the only way you're going to experience that is to take yourself and your clients through that journey. And you will find it. If you explore going deeper into inner healing, letting the Holy Spirit reveal what is it in you that God has used this tragedy to uncover. How could God use it? Remember, as I say, the enemy sets us up for destruction. All the enemy is after is to what? kill, steal, and destroy. And sometimes he just pushes it too far. And he really reveals that, wait a minute, something else is going on. But he really tries to destroy. Now, God takes that setup and he sets you up for victory. He said, I'm going to, if we look at this correctly, if you're willing not to be angry at me and blame me, if you're willing to step back and say, I have showed up on the scene. In fact, I've been here the whole time, but I've been waiting to break in and show you, if you let me, I can show you what's behind this sickness. In other words, I can show you that you opened the door. You're blaming me for something, but 99% of the time, sin opened the door. I'm not talking about when you fall off the roof and break your leg. I'm talking about when or a hurricane comes and knocks your house down. I'm talking about when the times that you have a sickness, but you were the cause of it. God says, I will take you there and I will heal you, and watch what happens in your family. That's if we're willing to stop blaming the one who wants to help us, miracles can happen. So Jesus is frustrated, right? Jesus, he said, so he decides he is going to manufacture a sign to help them understand. And so we continue. So Jesus is about a day's walk from where he's at. He's a day's walk from Bethany. And they don't understand why he's not going. First he says, well, he's asleep, right? And so, but he's trying to give this theological thing about how, we are going to go and wake him up. But he's saying that not yet. And they can't understand, because when he finally admits, well, he's dying and then he's dead, why are we still here? You see, because it says, Jesus finds out that the one he loves is sick, and yet he waits how long? 3 days for a reason. There's a reason why he waits 3 days, because he knows what his plan is. If he went right away, let's say Lazarus just died, and he raises him from the dead, what could a non-believer or a skeptic think? He wasn't really dead. The whole thing was a setup, the whole thing was a show. After 3 days, if you've ever been there, in 115-degree heat, he is very dead, right? And he has the odor to prove it. And I believe that God was waiting so that that sign could really be a powerful one. And so he tries to bring them back. He says, we are going to go back. Now, this is in the direction towards Jerusalem. And so they're saying, why do you want to go back? The last time we were there, things didn't go well. They were trying to kill us. They tried to stone us. And Jesus is saying, we look at this different language. He says, aren't there 12 hours in a day and all this stuff? He says, what has that got to do with the price of tea in China, right? What he's saying is that we have to make hay while the sun shines. The time is precious, and we have to use it. We have to take advantage now. This is a super lesson for us in the prayer ministry. Don't say, if you can pray now, do it. Don't say, let's get together, or I'll pray for you. Pray right now. Begin at least right now. You may never see that person again. You may never have an opening in their heart where they're willing to pray. Let them stay. I was praying with someone the other night. It was getting late, and I said, would you like to stay? And he said, let's finish this. We went till 1 a.m, and guess what? We nailed it. We nailed it. If we had left it unopened, half open, the enemy could have had his way with that healing, and he could have tried to discourage and he tried to even reattack. So Jesus says, we're going to respond. We're going back. And so the disciples say, well, we're going to die. He's going to die. We'll die with him. We'll all go back. We know this is not going to turn out well, but you can't tell him anything. He wants to go. We have to go. All right? And so on his arrival, the sisters greet him, right? So he tries to give them, he tries to comfort them. And Martha is what? Martha is what is her response? Martha and Mary, what is their response when she says, in verse 21, so on his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. She went out to meet him, and Martha says, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. What is she saying? It's your fault. This is pretty much your fault. You love him. You could have, if you really loved him, so they know you could have, but you didn't. And you're late. You're really, really late. And we don't understand, right? She has got to be, this is 2 miles away, and he comes 3 days later. It's like, this makes no sense. You're really late. So he's trying to explain to her what his intention is. He's trying to explain who he is. This is the whole point of the story. I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? And she's saying this, why are you giving me a theology lesson? I know these things. Why are you doing this now? Why are you not just comforting me? And why are you so late? And he's trying to explain, because this was the message. This was the reason why he manufactures this sign. Because after what I'm going to do, Martha, there will be undeniable evidence that I am who I say I am. And you will come to have this life through this belief. Jesus performs this amazing, amazing sign. And he calls out to him, right? He says, first he stands there and why does it say Jesus wept? But they make it, it's the shortest verse in the Bible, and they isolate it as this point is so important. Why is it so important that Jesus wept? It shows his love. This would not be very common for a man to weep like this out in public. But it shows this man understood. He understood pain, and he understood the suffering of Martha and Mary. And he felt his own anguish, so that one day he could say, there is nothing that you have experienced that I have not experienced. I have experienced every pain, every suffering that you have. I get it. I am not beyond this. I am fully human. I understand what it means to suffer the loss of your best friend, of someone that you truly, truly love. So they are aware that he loves him and he's compassionate. And I'm sure they're trying to understand, why are you so late? Yet he calls out and Lazarus comes out. No surprise, it says, at this, many came to believe in him. I would hope so, right? Even so much today did this shake things up that they immediately begin to plot against him. That the Pharisees and the scribes begin to plot against him. Imagine going to the Pharisees and saying, now we have a problem. We have undeniable evidence that Jesus is who he says he is. And things are not going to go well for us because they missed the whole point. It wasn't about them. It was about who Jesus is. If we respond to him, our whole world will be different. Our whole experience with the Romans may be very different. But they were only concerned about themselves and their jobs and their role and their position. But Jesus goes on to this is his greatest sign before his ultimate sign, where he is risen from the dead, where he is raised from the dead. But this last sign he had built up to a point that you too can believe. So John's hope is that as you go through these miracles, as you experience Lazarus walking out of the tomb, I was there. I was an eyewitness. I saw this. Who would even think to write this down? That's a good way when you're reading, said, no one would just make this up. What would be the point? This is so crazy. It had to have happened just this way. And so, as John believed, as many believed, we are able to come to belief. We are able to reconcile that God, Jesus, uses this tragedy, and it's his own best friend. It's the people he loved the most, Martha and Mary and their family. This is a tragedy. This is a horrific evil that has happened, that this young man dies, and yet God uses it for glory. It's how are you going to approach? So Jesus could have went there and just cried with them, or he could have done something about it. Are you ready to speak into the evil? Are you ready to speak into the sickness that you're dealing with? Are you willing to go deeper when the person you're praying for isn't healed right there? Are you disappointed, or you're saying, God will use this? He did it. He raised Lazarus from the dead to prove something greater. And it was the greatest lesson ever told, that you can have hope. When we are praying with people, we say, have hope. Stay strong. Stick with me. I'm sticking with you. Why did that man stick all these years? It was only for one reason. I said, I will stick with you. And he couldn't believe it. That was so overwhelming. And he must have told me a dozen times, I can't believe you put up with me. Really, I can't believe you put up with my SHIT, as my mother would say. Right? He was overwhelmed, and that kept him coming back. And it is totally paying off. It gave him hope. The fact that I believed in him, I believed in his ministry that was dissolving. I said, it's there, it's real, it's powerful, and I'm going to resurrect it. Believing in him, giving him that hope, that's what Jesus did that day. I'm giving you a sign to raising this man from the dead for only one reason: to give you hope. To give you hope in a new life, to give you hope that God will heal and he will do all that he says. meaning bring your life to fullness right now. And he will promise you a life of eternity with him. That's the hope that we have to give. And it's fun. It's absolutely fun to do this. It's not like it's painful. It's something you are giving people, giving them hope. And you do it by telling them your faith, your stories. Why do you believe? Why are you there with them? Do you believe in them? You believe in Jesus? You believe in his power? Yes, yes, yes. These are all the reasons why we're praying for you. They need to know that. You're not on an assignment. You're not doing a job. You're there because you love them and you want to give them hope. You want to see them living a fuller life. That will speak to them. It will speak into whatever suffering they are going through. And it will bring healing. Amen?